Questions, and because we have enough time to do that. My name is Lynn Shaw, and Carrie Thomas is with me tonight, and we'll be presenting. So we are from NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Okay, so we are a grassroots organization that educates, supports, and advocates for people living with mental illness and their families. And so we offer lots of programming, educational programming, and support groups to support those who need it. So I want to do a little disclaimer here because Carrie and I are neither psychologists or social workers. We are just experts in experience, in our life experience with mental health conditions, whether we live with it ourselves or we have a family member that may have a mental health condition. So the purpose of this presentation tonight is that we want to provide you with skills and resources to recognize the signs of mental health conditions and actually to know how to respond effectively. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Oh, I'm on mute. All right. Not even asking you to bring me up. All right. So let's get a sense of the room. So I'm going to ask you some questions as I raise a hand, so we'll see if these affect you. So have you ever wondered if your child was developing at the same rate as other children? Raise your hand if you've ever wondered. Okay. Have you ever found yourself worrying about a behavior being just a phase or something to really be concerned about? Yes. Have you ever been, okay, this is a good one. Have you ever been overwhelmed by your child's behavior? I like the double hands, yeah. Have you ever felt frustrated having to work with teachers at school and address their concerns with your child's behavior? Yeah, we all have had that, right? So the idea with this exercise is if you look around the room, we're not alone, right? These are just normal parent thoughts that we have and concerns that we have for our children. And so today I'm hoping that we can work through those a little bit and come up with ideas on how to help navigate those systems and things like that. Okay, I forgot to flip over. This is raising your hands, by the way. Okay, so what we know is youth who feel well do well, right? Mental health conditions can affect every aspect of a youth's person's life. Their ability to learn, their ability to have relationships with other people. So the idea that we want is to help our youth or anybody we know have really good mental health, the best that they can have, right? Okay. So one of the statistics that we like to use, that we know, is that 1 in 5 youth live with a mental health condition. So 1 in 5, that's 20% of our youth have a mental health condition. Out of that 1 in 5, the statistics are that 50% of them don't get the help that they need. So 50% of our youth are not getting the help that they need. So frustrating to me, right? So let's imagine that you had a stomach ache and you didn't go to the doctor for, it takes 8 to 10 years before someone will get the help that they need. So let's say that you had a stomach ache and didn't go to the doctor for 8 to 10 years. Doesn't really make sense, right? Same thing when we're talking about mental health conditions, that we really, it's okay to get the help. It's okay to seek resources to get help for mental health. Okay, so this slide is talking about what happens with kids who might not get the help that they need. They might isolate from friends, family, or society. The dropout rate for someone living with a mental health dropout rate of school could be 50% of kids that have a mental health condition may not finish school. 90% of the kids in the juvenile system, or 90%, or let's do this, 50, sorry guys, bear with me please. 50 to 75% of kids in the juvenile system live with a mental health condition. And then 90% of kids who die by suicide had a diagnosed mental health condition. Okay, we're gonna watch a video here. Maybe. I think I'm having delay. There it goes. I'm going to go back. I think my computer might have just froze. See if it starts. I know it was working just a little bit ago. I don't think so. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. All right, guys, we might have to skip that video. I hope we don't lose all of our videos. See if it. There also feels like there's a delay on my. Okay, well, we'll just move on. So here are some of the common conditions you might hear about. So you can look up there at the different types of mental illnesses. But these are just labels. So tonight we're not going to focus on the labels so much as we're going to concentrate on the challenges that our youth may have, that it creates for our youth. Okay, so it's important to know too that every individual is unique, even if they have the same diagnosis. But we do know that recovery is possible and there is help for each and every individual. All right, now we're going to talk about some of the warning signs that we want to look for in our youth when we're talking about mental health conditions. Maybe we do. Oh, okay, I skipped pages. Sorry, guys. Okay, so early identification is essential for intervention. These are the steps we're going to talk about tonight. Knowing the warning signs, reaching out and responding, working with the school staff and our children, and providing resources and support. Now on to the warning signs. I'm not sure I can handle a microphone and a clicker at the same time. So that's okay. Yeah, we're good. So feeling sad or withdrawn for more than 2 weeks is one of the warning signs. So feeling sad, right, is a normal human emotion. We all get sad. Things happen, makes us sad. But when sadness lasts for a long period of time, especially maybe for no reason at all, that could be a warning sign for us to pay attention to. Severe, out of control, risk-taking behaviors that harms oneself or others. So this third one is one I deal with, is sudden overwhelming fear for no reason, sometimes a racing heart, physical discomfort, or fast breathing. So I myself struggle with anxiety, and so I will often have a panic attack here or there. And so I get that racing heart, I get really intense feelings, which is amazing that I'm standing here talking with you guys tonight. But that's because I've learned some coping skills on how to do that, right? But anyway, so that's one. Seeing, hearing, or believing that things aren't real. Drastic changes in mood, behavior, personality, or habits. So if you saw your youth having severe mood swings, right? They go from being happy to being super angry, sad, those kind of things. That might be a warning sign to keep in mind. I also like to bring up the sleeping habits, because sleeping habits, maybe your youth is used to sleeping 8 hours a night, and then all of a sudden maybe they're only sleeping 2 hours a night and they can't sleep at night. Might be something to be concerned about. Sleeping habits the other direction. What if they're sleeping 14 hours a day? Don't want to get out of bed. That also might be a warning sign to pay attention to. They might have extreme difficulty concentrating, or staying still puts a person's physical danger, or might cause school failure. Intense worries or fears that get in the way of daily activities. So again, the key word there is intense, right? Because we all have fears, we all have worries, that's normal being human. But when it gets intense and it affects the way our daily life goes, that might be a warning sign. The last three are negative coping skills that might happen. So you might find your youth throwing up, using laxatives, not eating, losing weight. That might be a warning sign. Using alcohol or drugs, or trying to harm oneself, attempt suicide, or making plans to do so. So those are all things that I kind of call them red flags. So if you see these red flags, maybe the first time it's just a red flag and you might not be too concerned about it, but then you get another red flag. And as your red flags start piling up, then you're going to get concerned, like, maybe we need to start paying attention, maybe we should take a look at this. Okay, there's a little bit on bullying here. So we know that kids who live with a mental health condition can be victims of bullying, or they can also be the bully themselves. So this just talks about things that you might notice in bullying: unexplained injuries, destroyed clothing or books, difficulty sleeping, declining in grades, loss of interest. You can learn what bullying is and what bullying is not. Nowadays we have to worry about cyberbullying, which is another one. And if you want more information on that, you can go to stopbullying.gov, and they tell you a lot more about the bullying. So when we talk about the warning signs, again, what we're looking for is the intensity. How severe are those symptoms? How long do they last? And the level of distress. How are they affecting our daily functions, right? So because I'm sad does not mean I have a mental health condition, but if it lasted 3 weeks and I was pretty sad every day, the intensity was pretty severe, and I just stopped doing things in my life, right, and it's affecting my daily life, then I might get concerned that something's going on. Okay, so what might teachers see in the classroom? So they might see that your student is missing class frequently, missing assignments, those kind of things. Let's see. Yeah, shows patterns of perfectionism. Would you think that is a warning, or what a teacher might see as a warning sign? Yeah, how would that look? Never good enough, right? The student's like, I can't, it's not good enough. So that might be something to worry about. What about the frequently seek special conditions? So it's a student that says, oh, but I just need one more day. Please just give me one more day. Or I promise I'll get it done next week. Please just make an exception for me. Or, that might be a sign for the teachers to see. Okay, what you might see at home. So these are things that you might see at home. Constantly running late, might be isolated, might be using drugs or alcohol, feels sad, hopeless, empty, overreacts to disappointment or failure, has difficulty sleeping, might lie, make up stories, right? And I think I heard that there's parents with younger children, so I'm going to do the next slide as well. So if you have younger children at home, so those were for more the middle school, high school age. If you have younger children, they may never slow down, nothing pleases them, they have severe separation or anxiety, have excessive nonstop energy, are very impulsive, might have a low frustration tolerance, have disrupted sleep cycles, irritable and aggressive. So that's kind of what those look like. So I love the project that the thing you guys just did, where you were talking about the things that you're doing to support your kiddo. which I think is great. And so it was fun to hear some of those answers that you guys were giving and things that you're doing to support your kids. So I'm going to deviate away from this just a minute, because one of the thoughts that I was having too is one of the important things for our children too is that we are taking care of ourselves as well, right? It's kind of that old story about in order to take care of your kids, you have to take care of yourself. The airplane and the oxygen mask, right? Put the oxygen mask on yourself first so that you can be a help to others. So I want to throw that out to you guys for a minute. Let's talk about what are some things you as an adult can do to take care of yourself that might help take care of your kiddos. Sleep, beautiful. Absolutely, absolutely. What is it? Okay.
I enjoy having a clean house, so I make sure I keep it up, because when your area is cluttered, then you feel like there's too much chaos.
Yeah, so a clean house to help with the chaos. I absolutely agree.
Just take time for yourself, even if it's only like an hour or 2 hours.
Mhm.
If you need to run to get coffee by yourself for 30 minutes or whatever, just taking some time just for you.
Absolutely. Easier said than done sometimes as a parent, but so important, right? Take time for yourself.
Can you repeat what they're saying?
Yes.
that
So,
I can hear?
yeah, so she said taking care of yourself, whether it's 30-minute coffee or, just getting away for a little bit, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's more just specific to my house, but my husband and I, a long time ago, actually set up either a day or a weekend where either one of us or both of us will get away from the kids and just go do something, the two of us, or even just one of us, like, we find a babysitter. We basically be like, listen, neither one of us has gotten a day off, so if one of us is staying.
Nice. Well, that's a good supportive marriage. Yeah. So she's talking about her and her husband will either take a weekend together away, or they'll at least give each other a day away so that they can get a day off. So that's a great one for sure. Any other thoughts? Eating healthy. Eating healthy. That's a good one too. Hard these days in our society because we're such a run, on the go parents. So easy to hit the fast food and get the kids fed, and yeah.
I always feel better whenever I stay active or work out and walk when I'm tired.
Beautiful, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so exercising, getting out, walking, those kind of things. Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Any other ideas? So I love that how it tied into your guys's, how you support your kids, but also to start the, to plant the seed of taking care of yourself as well, and how important that can be, right? Okay, so we're just going to talk briefly about the common warning signs of suicide. I feel like this conversation's come up a lot recently in our community. So this may be a reminder for you, or it might be the first time you've heard it, so we'll just kind of go through it. But these are some things that you would look for, or that you might notice in a kiddo that might be thinking about suicide. So they might be talking, writing, or drawing about death. They might be talking about, like, I have no reason to live, I'm a burden to others, not being here tomorrow. They might feel hopeless, desperate, or trapped. You might notice that they're looking for ways to commit suicide, right? Giving away possessions. They might have a loss of interest in everything they care about. They may just be behaving recklessly, those kind of things. So what should you do if you notice some of these signs? What would be the first thing you'd want to do? I'm testing. Talk to them, but what are you going to ask them? You have a plan? Are you thinking about suicide, right? Are you thinking about taking your life? Whoops. Oh, this one is for the younger children. So those of you who have younger children, they might see a change in their usual behavior. They might be thinking, dreaming, fearing, or worrying about death. They might have risky behavior. They even may talk about suicide, and they may have anger, irritability, and violence. So as sad as it is, we are having younger kids try to take their lives. So it is good to know these warning signs. So yeah, first thing you're going to do is ask the question, are you thinking about suicide? If they say yes, you're not going to leave them alone. You're going to share relevant information or try to get them the help, right? If there's someone that's not your kiddo, if it's a friend or something, you're going to contact their family and let them know, right? Yeah. Okay, so here's how to act and respond. You're going to talk to your child or their friend if it's the friend that's suicidal. Because a lot of what we know is sometimes your children's friends are afraid to tell their own parents, right? So they may come to you as the parent of their friend. And so you're going to talk to school staff or a healthcare professional. But if it is someone else's child, you want to make sure that you tell the family. Okay. So here we're just going to be talking about, I'm just going to go here, talking with your child. So basically what you're going to do when you talk to your child, you really want to keep it pretty open. You don't want to be really directive. You want to really be listening. You want to just say what's going on, how can I help, what are the things that are going on with you. You might mention that you've noticed their behaviors. I've noticed that you haven't been sleeping at night, and I'm concerned about that. Or I've noticed that you have marks on your wrists, and I'm very concerned about that. Or whatever the thing is that you're noticing, it's okay to talk about that. And then you want to let them know that you're there for them and you want to help them. And there are things that you can do together to work through this. And so really just listening to your kids and listening to what they're saying. Some of the things they have up here, can you tell me more about what's happening? How are you feeling? Have you had feelings like this in the past? Sometimes you need to talk to an adult about how you're feeling. I'm here to listen. Would you like to talk to me? Do you feel like you want to talk to someone else? Maybe they don't feel comfortable talking to mom or dad, but they feel comfortable talking to a teacher or a counselor or something like that. Okay, so what not to say? So we don't want to dismiss them and say, we go through times like this all the time. We'll be fine. It's okay. No big deal. That's not how they're feeling right now, right? They feel like it's a really big deal. Don't ask questions that only give them a yes or no. Are you okay? Mm-hmm. 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 Are you having any problems? Don't ask in a way that indicates you want to know as an answer. You're not feeling anxious at school, are you? Oh, no. Not a good way to ask that question. And don't promise confidentiality. I promise I won't tell. Never say that, because if they are truly suicidal or something's going on, you're going to want to get the help. And so don't promise that you'll keep it confidential. Okay. I'm going to go here first and then we'll go back. See if it works. Yeah.
And why is it very different than sympathy?
Can you guys hear it?
Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space where someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, I'm down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, woo, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. I have it, yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. At least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
All right, well, let's talk about that. Easy. Easy, hard. I know from a parent perspective, it's super hard, right? Because we want to fix it for our kids. We really want to just make it all better. I want to be the one, oh, I have a sandwich for you, you know? Yeah. So what they're trying to get at is that just a listening in ear and saying, I can tell you, you know, I'm here for you when you hurt, basically, and just being there for our kids. Any comments on that before I move on? That was a video by Dr. Brene Brown, by the way, if you haven't seen that yet. Okay, I'll go back to these. So then some of the things we can do is talk with the school staff, so you can share concerns with the teachers, establish communication channels, ask for classroom adjustments if needed, and then talk to your healthcare professional. So I always think the best way with kids is, because we can't tell it sometimes if it's just behavior or if there's something more going on, is always starting with our family physician, right? Just going to your PCP and having them check the kiddos out, talk to them a little bit and see. If the PCP feels like it's a little bit more than that, then they will probably make a referral for the kiddo to get more help. That's a really good way to start, by getting help. One of the important things as a parent is to keep really good records of medical records and things that are going on. So as time goes on, you can see if there's any patterns developing, what's worked, what hasn't worked, those kind of things. And then educating yourself, and educate if you are ending up with a child that's having some mental health issues. It's really important to educate yourself so that you can become more aware of what will help and what won't help your child. Okay, yeah, so now we're going to talk about working with school staff. And this is the third step that we were talking about. So working with the school staff. So young people often act differently at home than they do at school. It is essential to coordinate with school staff to make sure you have all the information you need to figure out what is going on with your child. By working together, you can connect your child to appropriate services and supports they need earlier. Okay. You can't assume that your school staff will understand your child's situation. Ask teachers how they prefer to communicate. Do they like to communicate by email, text, phone calls? Do your research, be knowledgeable about your child's situation and what helps and what doesn't, and share reputable resources with your child's school. And one of the things that NAMI does is we do a program called Ending the Silence, where for students, and so we actually are going into right now freshmen or ninth grade health classes, and we're talking to kids about what are the warning signs, how do you get help if you're experiencing those warning signs, and how do you help a friend if you notice that in your friend. So the big takeaway for that for the kids is find a trusted adult. So it's kind of fun to be able to talk to you guys, because you might be that trusted adult that would come up.
I have one thing.
Yes, sir.
I was in law enforcement for 23 years. And I say to all the parents here tonight, just because they're your kids, do not think you can't handle it. I've been on so many calls where the parents were like, I didn't see it. Seriously, educate yourself.
And sometimes the signs can be subtle. So one of the things in my family, so I have a husband that lives with bipolar disorder, and that's how I got connected with NAMI. But I have children, and so they have the potential of inheriting dad's illness. And so one of the things that we have done in our family is we absolutely have the conversations. You know, we talk about it. We aren't embarrassed or ashamed about it because we know that there's treatment. My husband's gotten great treatment and is doing very well. So we have those conversations. And so mental illness in my generation is that we did not talk about mental health conditions. It was a taboo subject, right? We just did not talk about mental health. And so as time has gone on and things have happened in my family, the importance of talking about it is so crucial because it shouldn't be embarrassing, it shouldn't be shameful. It's an illness, you know, and it's a recoverable illness if we get the proper treatment or the help that we need. And so if I could encourage you with anything tonight, it's to be open and to be okay about having those conversations, you know, and talking about it. And I'm going to repeat what the gentleman said, so, because I'm supposed to put it on the recorder, is that he's been an officer for 23 years, and so he's seen a lot of families not be educated in that and not know what to do, and thinking that it wouldn't be their child that it could happen to, and then it happened to their child. Did I synopsis that okay? Thank you for sharing that.
And I think that goes back to what the video said too about the connect piece.
Mhm.
Because today's day and age, it's so easy. Like, I mean, if they're like, you know, if they're giving you
You know,
those
you want to
one-word
just,
an-
oh, you would
Oh.
have to talk into this one, you never mind. Go ahead.
if they're giving you those one-word answers,
Mhm.
you know, and they're on their devices or whatever, it's easy to just say, okay, well, my kid's into video games, my kid's this, my kid's that, you know, and not actually make that happen or
Mhm.
like take the extra steps that's needed to
Mhm.
make that happen, or give them the open door even.
Right.
You know, so I think that's incredibly valid, and just the connect piece plus the education I think is important.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that it's harder for our kids to connect because of the technology these days, right? And us as parents. So maybe we should throw out some ideas. How do we connect to our kids? What are some ways that we could connect to our kids despite the technology?
We really tried, because in our house, since we're not so young, it's me and my husband that have the technology issues.
Oh.
But we do our best to, dinner time, phones are left across the room,
Mhm.
or turned off, or like everything's for dinner. Even though it's, you know, half an hour, 45 minutes, we sit, eat together, with nothing, just us and the food and talking about what's going on.
Yeah, that's a lost art, isn't it? So dinner time, putting the phones away, being unplugged during dinner time, having family conversation during that time. Yeah, that's a good one.
I know the kids were gonna play the video games no matter what, so I decided to just get right in there and say, okay, can you teach me how to do this? And you know, they giggled at my inability. And it just opened conversation, because I was reaching down into their world.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just a good conversation starter.
Right. So joining what they like, right? So video games, and so jumping in there and understanding their world a little bit, what they're doing and what's going on. Yeah, so that's great.
Things I think one of the things I struggle with my kids is eye contact,
Mhm.
communicating, so making sure that we're engaged with
Mhm.
each other. And to piggyback off of what she said, my almost 15-year-old daughter and my 10-year-old son both recently came to me and said, Mom, do we have a show that's just us, you and me,
Oh.
that we watch together? And the two shows that they picked are shows that are just on the cusp of being a little bit older than what they are
Mhm.
for appropriateness. And I wouldn't normally allow it, except it's giving me an opportunity to speak to them both about, hey, you know, what do you think about this aspect?
Mm.
Or, you know, like my daughter's almost 15 and she wanted to watch a show that was a
little more adult.
risque, if you will. And so
Mhm.
we talked about those scenes.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So I think connecting on that level is important.
Right. So the two things she said was eye contact for one, right? And really looking at each other with eye contact. But I like her second thing of picking a show that you watch together, and then the shows that they picked were just a little bit older conversations for her kids. but then they were able to have those conversations and talk about those issues that would come up on the shows. That's awesome.
I take random times, not every day and not all of the time, but just when I feel like something's going on or something's building, I will, take my kids aside, separating. Because I have a 10-year-old and I have a 5-year-old, and my 5-year-old's just gotten into school, and she's been having a lot of anxiety associated with it. So I've been taking her aside and trying just to talk to her.
Mm-hmm.
And though she's 5, I just ask her, like, how's life, how's school, what's
Mm-hmm.
going on, why you blue, that kind of thing. And so I just try to separate that, because oftentimes it becomes a difficulty when the information is shared with brother. So, I want to be able to just like, okay, I'm at your level, because I have the variation of age, that big gap there. I try to get at their level.
Right. So that's great. So having those one-on-one and individually, right, not the kids together, and making them kind of feel special that you're paying attention to just them at that moment and how they feel, those kind of things. Absolutely. One of the other things I've heard is date nights. What if you had a date night with your kid and it was just you and your kiddo, whether you went, teenagers took them out to coffee or went to a playland somewhere. I don't know. My kids are older, so I forgot those days. So, yeah, I'm grandma now. My daughter is 25 and has a 2-year-old, and now she's having another little girl. So I'm in the next phase, and I have a 16-year-old at home. So, okay. So we're still talking about how to talk to teachers here. Okay, yeah, so it's important to know the options that are available for your child, talk with the staff, and figure out the proper accommodations for your family, for your child, right? Here's some questions that they suggest. Could we work together to meet my child's needs? Do all the staff know what my child's needs are? Are there any areas my child needs in making progress? What strategies are in place or could be in place to help my child? Where can we meet or when can we meet again? And can I have a copy? Basically, can I have a copy of what's happening with my child in school? The progress reports, the things that are the child may need. Okay, so that's how to work with the school. Any thoughts or questions on working with teachers and your students? Anybody have any experiences they want to share?
I'm just curious what happens in the schools with kiddos that, if their parents have mental health challenges and then they are having problems in school, and of course the parents probably can't help out, or even know that they have problems. What avenues do the schools take?
Well, I'm hoping that they would get them into some special education programming, or they also have like IEPs and things like that. And sometimes schools will have advocates within the school, but it is a challenge if the parents don't know how to advocate for that, or how to get that for children. The schools, I feel like, are getting better at addressing that and trying to help families more. But you also have to put yourself in the school's position, right? One teacher may have 25 kids and it's hard to get to all the kids and that sort of thing. And so you'll hear that excuse a lot, is that we're trying to help every single kid, but our hands are full, right? We have a lot of kiddos. And so a lot of times it does take that parent getting in there and advocating. But there are a lot of resources in the school. So if the parents need help, there's ways to get that, if the parent's willing to step forward for that child.
I'm trying to think of, instead of the parent having conversations with the kids trying to have conversations with
The school.
the
Yeah.
parents.
Oh, with the
that
parents.
are struggling. So,
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, it's a challenge, yeah. And sometimes the teachers or counselors might recognize that and try to help, but not always. Yeah. Any other thoughts about schools?
I'm actually like deep in it right now, like as in today.
Okay.
So I have a question about, because my son is 15.
Okay.
He's going to be 16 in January. So, where do you draw the line as a parent? Because like I'm back and forth emailing and with his counselor
Mhm.
and asking questions and, you know, asking for meetings and all this kind of stuff. And I've asked to meet a couple times, and, you know, the way that they're wanting to handle it, they call him in by himself to talk with him. And, you know, like there's, you know, they want to get this teacher's input and stuff like that. And I just, like, I mean, so that's my oldest, and
Mhm.
I've never been through it. So, like, you know, I got some mama bear coming out and saying, you know, how dare you meet with my son without me being
Right.
in the room, you know, and you don't know him like I know him, and, you know, so don't tell me this and that. But at what point do you draw the line saying, okay, well, maybe it's okay for that to happen, you know,
Mhm.
because he is getting older.
Mhm.
He does need to have some responsibility for grades and things like that. Yeah, I don't even know what the question is. I just, like, where do
Right,
you draw the line?
right.
You know, as a parent, like, for school, and how do you let them kind of, you know, grow up, I
Mhm,
guess,
mhm.
without, because I'm not a helicopter mom, but at the same point, I don't want anyone hurting my baby. you know?
Right,
I
right.
don't want him, you know, I don't want him feeling bad about himself.
Right,
So-
and how is he feeling? Does he feel like he needs more help, or what would he
Well,
say?
It's kind of up in the air right now. He's back and forth. It's
Right.
about a grade, and it's about whether or not he should stay in one class versus another.
Mhm,
So,
right.
I mean, it's not like a behavioral issue or anything like that, but
Right.
it is something whether he's going to give up it because it's hard, or if he's giving it because he doesn't understand our learning style. you know?
Mhm,
So
right.
We're
So-
figuring that out, and it's crazy navigation, but I mean, I just don't know how it hands-on to be.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a hard one. Does
Sorry,
anybody,
that's
no,
a bad question.
no, it's okay, but does anybody have ideas for that? I have a thought, but I don't want to be the only one with a thought. No? So one of the thoughts is to kind of see how it goes for him, because he is at that age, right, where he's
Right.
trying to be his own person and self-advocate for himself, maybe. So I heard you say that he went to the counselor or teacher to get help, and so that's a good positive step, you know. And so maybe watch to see if he can work it out before you jump in, you know.
If
And
they
it's
go
a-
to him.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's more of like
But maybe maybe they will engage him, and he'll be able to do that and just kind of watch. But then if it gets unbearable or out of hand, then Mama Bear runs in and
Well, he's
tries to
just
help them.
kind of shutting down,
Oh,
you know,
Mhm.
so it's affecting his behavior, it's affecting his
Right.
grades.
right.
Okay.
So yeah, it might be that you could go talk to a teacher or a counselor. You know, I don't really know for sure, but yeah, it is hard. Yeah, and I say parenting is the hardest job in the world. Yes, I do.
Slightly different perspective. I am actually getting a master's degree in marriage and family therapy,
Mhm.
and a lot of the time the parenting is at that age, because they do have that sense of self. I know sometimes we think of, you know, they're still too young, we don't want them to do everything by themselves. A lot of it is asking them, how much does he want you there, being right there versus, no, I think I can say, I think I have the right words, I think I know what's going on. But if he does start, you know, just keep checking, like, are they still listening to you? Do you feel like you still got grasp on this, or do you need that? A lot of the time in special office, but in my view, don't leave up to the school. They're gonna try to, you know, they're gonna do what they do. But if he needs that help, he doesn't feel like he's being listened to, he doesn't feel like it's helping or whatever, then that would be where I would say, just from my perspective, is when you step in and be like, no, this is what's going on, and just checking with him a lot.
Mhm. Yeah. So the takeaway with that is to really check in with him and over, right? Because it may take some time to figure it out. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to talk about a little bit of resources and support. And so that was our fourth step in those steps that we were going to go through. And so always advocating for your child. So talking with the pediatrician or their primary care physician. If need be, get a mental health specialist. Work with the school as best you can to get the help for your child, and then connect with other families. And so that's where I'm going to go now, is talking about NAMI, my NAMI commercial now. Well, yeah, I'm just going to skip this one. And so NAMI has a book, if you're having troubles with the school, called Parents and Teachers as Allies, and we have those at our NAMI office. So if anybody needs those, just give us a call and we would try to get you one. Wait just a second, can you guys hear that? The music going by. So anyway, that's a real helpful book on how to work with the teachers within the school system. So you can just call our office. We can either mail it to you, you can stop by and pick it up, the NAMI office. We offer different programming for families. So Ending the Silence is what I'm doing now, and I'm doing the family edition of that. We have one that we do for students that I mentioned that we go into right now. We're doing freshman health classes. We also offer a class called Basics, and this is for parents or caregivers who have a young one that is experiencing a mental health condition or behavioral issues. That class is in the middle of it right now, so our next one will be in January or February. So if you're interested in taking our Basics class, you just call our office and get on that list. It's a 6-week program that we offer that helps parents learn how to navigate the school systems, a little bit of parenting things, the resources that are available in town, that sort of thing. We also have a support group for parents. It's the 4th Tuesday of every month, and it's at the NAMI office. I did put brochures on the back table on your way out if you want. There's one about Basics, and there's also one about the support group that you can grab and check that out. We offer a family-to-family class, but that's for if it's an adult family member that you're dealing with that might have a mental health condition. So did we pass these out? Yes, we passed out papers to you guys. So you guys have in front of you a magnet, and the magnet is all the NAMI information so that you can, if you need to reach us, you can. There's also a card, a green card, and the reason I point that out is on the back of that card you'll find all the warning signs that we talked about in case you forget. It has the warning signs. But one of the things that Colorado did is we have a, they call it a crisis support line. And so there's a 1844 number on the front of that card, and you can call in to get help. And you can call in as a family member if you don't know what to do, or the person who lives with a mental illness can call in and get help, or somebody who's just having mental health issues. And so that you get connected to a master's level clinician for free, and you can talk. But the really fun thing is they just added a text line to that. So now teens can text to get help. So they don't even have to call and talk to a live person. They can just actually do it through text. And that got rolled out last fall, and it's been really fun to watch the kids use that. And so it's just a talk line. They just get to talk. And it doesn't even have to be a crisis. It could be, man, I failed that test and I don't really know how I'm going to tell my parents and I'm really stressing over it, you know, that kind of thing. I broke up with my girlfriend or my boyfriend and I'm so sad I don't know how to handle it. It can be any sort of thing that they want to text about. So that's been a really cool thing. So you have those there. And on the back of the table, I'm going to put some stickers that you can give to your kids, and it has the text line information on them there for them. We talked about Ending the Silence. We talked about Basics. And I think that is it. So any questions for me really quick before I turn it over to Carrie? She's going to share her story with you tonight.
Just when you mentioned earlier, if like if your child's friend were to confide in you to contact their family, what if their family is the source of that suicide attempt?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I would start with that 1844 number because they'll advise you the best way to handle all of that. Absolutely. Yeah. And I put that 844 number in my phone because I never know who I may come in contact with. It may be somebody that I meet in the store that's just having a really bad day and they may need to talk to somebody, and I'm like, I have a number you can call, you know. So it's a Colorado number, so it's out of Denver. You'll call. Yeah. Yeah. And I like to give that one out more than the National Suicide Prevention one, only because I've heard about there's sometimes you're on hold like 20 minutes with the National Suicide Prevention. Way too long to be on hold, you know. And so the Colorado one you get right through usually. And when you call in, they'll ask, is this a crisis or a mental health emergency? And you'll push 1, or is this just that you want to talk? Press 2. So then you that way you either go to just a warm line to talk to somebody, or you go to a crisis specialist. So it's pretty cool. All right, Carrie, I'm going to turn it over.
And one of the things that we talked about a little bit earlier in the presentation was that the age of onset for a lot of mental health conditions is younger than a lot of us expect. It can be as young as 11 years old or 9 years old. And in my case, I was pretty young when my mental health symptoms started. I was 9 years old. And you had to have met me as a kid to understand this, but prior to me turning 9, I was a really extroverted kid. I was full of energy. I would run up to people that I didn't know and give them a big hug. I would get up on stage and perform. I just had this boundless energy, and I was always really happy. And an event happened when I was 9 that was traumatic, and my personality changed. And I started developing anxiety. I was afraid of people. It was really hard for me to be around people. And I sort of, looking back at it now as an adult, I noticed a shift that just happened in me. I kind of shut down. And that vibrancy, that energy that I had was gone. And, over time I developed more depression and more anxiety. I can remember being in middle school, and most of us probably remember being in middle school and those awful passing periods where we had like 4 minutes to get to the other side of the building, and we were in this crowd of students, and I hated passing periods, like a lot of kids do, I think. And I would always get this tightness in my chest that, over time would linger longer and longer, and I would get shortness in my breath. And I didn't have language for this at the time, right? I didn't know that tightness was anxiety. I just experienced it as tightness, and it became normal for me to experience that. And we know when we carry tension around in our bodies for a long time, that takes a toll. And for me, I started losing my appetite after a while. I just had this tension in my stomach all the time, and after a while I didn't want to eat breakfast when I got up in the morning because I was too tense. And then I wouldn't want to eat lunch. And over time, my stomach shrank, as it does when we stop eating as much as we should. And so I lost dangerous amounts of weight by the time I got into high school. And it wasn't because I had an eating disorder. It wasn't because I wanted to lose weight. It was the anxiety. Another thing that I can remember experiencing is I would hear voices in my head. And they would sound kind of like these murmurings. It sounded like just almost a sea of voices, unintelligible in my head, and they would be there when I would sit down to take a test. It would make it hard to concentrate on that test. I would hear them sometimes in the shower. They would come and go, but they were there. And I also would carry around this emotional pain that was hard for me to describe. And it would build and build, and I went, nights without sleeping, and there were times where that pain just would build to the point where my body just, would collapse. And the context that I was in dealing with these symptoms, certainly these were some red flags, kind of like we discussed, for mental health conditions. And unfortunately, in my family, we weren't educated. We didn't have, the knowledge that, we all have now and we all share now going through this presentation. And without this knowledge, my parents and my sister and I internalized this shame, which can happen a lot with mental health conditions. And I think one reason that is because in our society, we're taught to identify with our thoughts and our feelings. I am sad. I am, this ugly thought that I just had. And we're not as good as we should be about separating ourselves from our feelings. I am not sad, I am feeling sad. But over time, when these mental health symptoms can kind of accumulate, it can be really, really easy and even in a subtle way to internalize that and to say, I'm a bad person because I'm having these bad feelings and these bad thoughts. Something must be deeply wrong with me. And that happened in my family. There's a history of mental health conditions that runs both on my mom's side and my dad's side. So my parents were dealing with their own mental health challenges, and they carried that shame, and we isolated. We didn't get help. We didn't have this education, and because of that, the symptoms that I experienced, really there wasn't a space for any of that to be expressed or to get help. And so when we don't have that safe space that we need, we find whatever way is at our disposal to survive. And we develop survival strategies. I was very, very fortunate as a kid growing up that I had a good education and I liked school. And that became my outlet. I poured myself into school. I hung out with the nerdy kids and, got really good grades and got excited about school. And I got really good at wearing masks and carrying this very collected composure that I had it all together, and I was very calm all the time on the outside. And I just became what the people around me wanted me to be. And I got really good at burying all of that pain and all those symptoms, denying it, ignoring them, pretending that they weren't there. And that's how I got by. And I don't recommend doing that. Because as you guys all know, just because we bury pain or mental health symptoms doesn't mean that they go away. In fact, the opposite happens. They usually get worse over time. So fast forward a few years, I had the opportunity to go to college, and I'm so grateful. I was doing so well in college. I was taking graduate classes as a sophomore. I had a lot of friends for the first time in my life. I had 2 jobs. I wasn't sleeping. I was sleeping maybe 2-3 hours a night on average. And in college, that's another norm, right? When you're a college student, it's expected that you stay up all night most of the night. So I didn't recognize that as a red flag. And unfortunately, our bodies can only sustain that kind of activity for so long. And there was one semester that was particularly stressful for me. And that's when my symptoms that I had been burying for 7-8 years had decided that they were going to bubble up, and I couldn't control them anymore. So I went for about a week pacing up and down my room every night because I couldn't shut my mind off. My thoughts were racing in and out of my head really fast, and I started having all of these insights, about subjects in school that I was interested in, and I was talking a mile a minute to the people around me, and I was so hyper, but it wasn't a hyper that was typical for me. It was more of a wired kind of hyper. And it got to the point where those thoughts that were racing really grew out of my control, and I lost my grasp over them. And I started seeing things that weren't there, hearing things that weren't there, believing things that weren't there. I can remember being at Chapel Hills Mall and people watching, and just being convinced when I would make eye contact with people passing by that I could interpret really significant things about these people, even though I had no idea who they were. I'd never met them. That's an example of a delusion that I had. And over the next several days, those delusions and my psychosis continued to escalate. And I reached a point where I no longer knew who I was or where I was. I was completely disoriented. And it felt like I was having a nightmare, but I didn't realize that the nightmare wasn't real. And I am very, very lucky that during that time, my sister was around and my boyfriend was around, who's my husband now. And they saw that I wasn't okay. They had never seen me in this state before. I had driven up to Denver in that state, and I ended up in a shopping mall, didn't know where I was. They found me. They were terrified. They thought someone had drugged me because they just had never seen me in this state. And they took me straight away to the ER, and I'm very, very grateful to them that they did that. You can probably imagine being in their shoes and how scary that was for them. And they did the right thing. by taking me to the hospital. I was in the ER for about 3 days because there was a waiting list with the nearest mental health hospital. So they ended up knocking me out, and I woke up in a mental health hospital. And it was there, I was not happy to be there. I was very, very unhappy to be there. But it was there that I started to get help, and that I learned I have bipolar disorder. I also have post-traumatic stress disorder. And that explained a whole lot of suffering that I'd gone through, of not knowing how to deal with. And it also gave me a path toward recovery that I did not know was possible, and that my parents didn't know was possible. Now I had an explanation, and I could begin the journey of educating myself like we talked about, and really understanding myself instead of blaming and shaming myself. That was also the beginning of me finding treatment as well. So one of the first steps as someone with bipolar disorder that I went through was spending a few months trying to figure out which medication would work for me and trying different things. For a lot of folks, this is trial and error. It can take months for some, years for some. I was lucky that I found a mood stabilizer that works really well for me. It does a nice job of kind of quelling my mania, which are my highs. When a person has bipolar disorder, we experience highs that are higher than typical highs, called mania, and then we experience lows, which we call depression. So my mood stabilizer does a nice job of kind of evening those highs and lows out. And that has enabled me to work. And I'm so thankful that I live in a day and age where we have access to treatment that works, honestly. Mental health conditions in my grandparents' day truly were a death sentence, and they're not anymore because of the culture we have now around recovery. We believe in recovery, and we have knowledge, and we're continuing to get better and better with treatment. And so I'm lucky, and I feel very grateful to live the life that I live. And I do experience triggers every day, and some days are good, some days are hard, some days are really hard. One of the things that I do that I heard a couple of you guys mention when we were talking about self-care, I loved your ideas with self-care, by the way, and what you guys are doing to take care of yourself. I have gotten in a routine of taking an hour to myself every single day, and I write. And that's my time to reconnect with myself and to recharge, to process the events that have happened during the day, and to support myself. Before I had safe people in my life, my writing was my safe space that I could create for myself. And that blank page was a page where I could express whatever was on my mind, and no one was going to judge me, and I could be totally, totally myself. So it's been a beginning of cultivating that relationship with myself. Some other self-care things that I do to stay well. I tried adaptive yoga for the first time this year. And as someone with PTSD, I carry a lot of tension in my body. I can struggle to connect with my body at times. I can feel very disconnected from my body. And yoga has been an amazing exercise and healing tool around that. I will use apps on my phone. Celtic music I love, that helps me with my anxiety, and rain and water and ocean sounds help me sleep at night. I'll take mental breaks frequently throughout the day when I feel overstimulated or overwhelmed. If it's nice outside, I'll go for a walk. If I need to step into the bathroom for a couple of minutes just to get some space, I'll do that. And I would say the biggest contributor to my recovery has been connecting with safe people and ensuring that everybody who's in my inner circle is a safe person. And at times, unfortunately, what that has meant is that I've had to leave relationships that weren't safe or that were toxic or unhealthy, which is a very difficult thing to do because you care about people. But I found that for my mental health, it makes such a huge deal who I open up to, who I spend a lot of time with. And I've developed a pretty high standard. If a person is going to be in my inner circle, then they're going to be good for my mental health. I'm going to feel good after I'm with them. I'm going to feel encouraged. And I'm fortunate to have people in my life that really are good for me and love me for who I am. So that's a little bit about my experiences and kind of some coping skills that I use and tools. And I want to take some time to open it up to all of you if you'd like to share your experiences or if you have any questions. Yeah. Type 1. She asked if I have type 1 or type 2 bipolar. I have type 1. Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
Did you do any EMDR therapy, or what type of therapy did you initiate when you found out you had PTSD?
Thank you for asking that. He asked if I've done EMDR or what kinds of therapy I've done for PTSD. I have not done EMDR. I want to try it. And I've done mostly talk therapy. I'll be honest and say that it's been difficult for me to find a therapist who's been safe and trauma informed. But in the last couple of years, I have found that. So I'm going to continue on. Yeah. Yeah.
You said, I guess, with your boyfriend at the time, your sister were the ones that helped you when you had a breakdown, I don't know what the right word is, but were there other people at other times, I guess from an outside perspective, or something to see somebody else that might be going through something?
Mm-hmm.
What's the best way for somebody in that situation to approach that person or not, first have that person push back?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. He asked if there were others when I was in crisis who were there and what did they do to help and what can we do to help someone in crisis. And I did have a couple of girlfriends who saw me in crisis. They didn't know, just like my sister and my boyfriend, they didn't know what was going on, but they knew I wasn't myself. And they were really great, and again, I'm lucky for this. They were really great about simply pointing out things that they observed. So, Carrie, you seem kind of agitated. You don't seem quite like yourself. You haven't slept. I've noticed you haven't been eating. Is everything okay? And I think that's a really nice way to try to open the door with a person who's in crisis, because you're not coming at it from a judgmental perspective, but you're showing them that you notice them and that you see them. And I actually, when I was at Chapel Hills, when I told you guys about that experience, I did have 2 friends with me there, and they noticed that I was really kind of upset, and they took me back to the car. They had driven us there, and they took me back home so that I could have some space and quiet. So doing what you can to ensure that someone is in a safe place is really huge. So if you're not taking them to the hospital, maybe you're taking them back home, you're making them a cup of tea, you're trying to encourage them to calm themselves, and facilitating an environment that is calming, getting them a blanket if they like blankets, that kind of a thing. I hope that helps. Yeah.
I have a different, I've experienced mental illness in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
It was my grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
and I did not realize at the time that she was mentally ill.
Sure.
And we were in a foster home, and just to make a long story short, she came back and she got us. The
Okay.
state released us back to her. But she did crazy things to us, something like Virginia Woolf. It was really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to, I started taking classes for social work. And through those social work classes, I never realized before that she had a problem. We just learned to roll with the punches,
Sure.
deal with life.
Yep, you survive.
But it wasn't until much later in life when I took those social work classes that I realized that she had a problem, and it wasn't me. And I went to like myself. And I learned that actually, when I took after I took those social work classes, I cried because I couldn't live. I couldn't like myself because she hated herself. She was very much mentally ill, and
Sure.
nobody knew what we were going through in that home. Nobody knew. There was nobody to help us. And so it wasn't until years later, until I was an adult, just a couple of years ago, that I realized it was her. It wasn't me.
Wow.
And that I didn't have to be extra introvert. I was very much introverted. And I learned to write. I learned to talk about my experiences. And I learned that it wasn't us. So that's a different thing about mental illness that I experienced as a child and then as an adult, that it helped. When I took those social work classes, I understood life. I understood myself so much better.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So what I'm hearing is that those classes really created healing for you.
It did. I mean, and I want to say this. I do go to church, and I know that God can do anything. But I believe He used those classes so I could see life in a different perspective, and I gained knowledge that I didn't have before, and I went through life not liking myself because she didn't like us. So, and I realized that my mother was very much mentally ill, and we lived in a house that nobody knew. So, yeah.
And that's a scary place for a kid to be.
It was very scary. But I overcame. My sister is just coming out of it, and she's 3 years older than me. But it was a bad time. But I learned to live. I learned to like myself. I learned to smile. I learned that I can be a part of the community.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. Yeah.
So I'm familiar with the low lows, but I'm kind of curious to know, what does the highs look like? Like the higher than highs, because I'm familiar with the low and the lows. But
Sure.
can you give a couple of examples as to what that would look like?
Absolutely. So you're referring to mania, correct, when you say the highs? So everybody is different, and it's my understanding that folks with type 2 bipolar disorder have lower, milder manias, and those of us with type 1 have more extreme. So I have more extreme manias, and mine actually have a psychotic element to them. So that's why I had that break with reality. It was a psychotic element of the mania. But leading up to that, before I had my break with reality, I felt very euphoric. I was really happy. If someone had told me that, I was experiencing a problem, I would have argued with them because it didn't feel like a problem. I was really energetic. I could go a long time. I went an entire semester barely sleeping, and I held down a graduate class and 2 jobs, and I just had this boundless energy. And I also was very, very productive, and it felt like I could take on any challenge. It's intoxicating, honestly, and it can be a very, very hard thing to let go of. And I think that's one reason why folks with bipolar disorder sometimes resist taking medication, because it's been shown that creativity is highly associated with mania. So during manic episodes, people who are artists might come up with their most brilliant piece. They might write brilliantly in a way that they can't when they're not manic. So it's a very enticing experience to have. It has its really serious consequences too. High risk behavior. There's almost always a crash, you know, for most people. For me, I would say certainly it ends with that crash. But yeah, does that answer your question? Sort of. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To answer your question, I think it's kind of like they said, every person is different, so every time the illness is diagnosed, it's going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
So different people in my family deal with it, and they're making us, we're not the same. You're just going to recognize that this person isn't behaving normally, and a lot of the times there's irrational thoughts, and there's no way to deal with that person because they're in that phase. So it may not be the same. You have every 10 people in this room had it, and it was the same for everyone. But it's just you have to know that person long enough to know that they're going to make it. And like you said, a lot of times it is the no sleep. It is a lot of energy. And like I said, it's not being able to talk to them in any type of rational thought because you can't connect to what you're saying at that time. And if you do try and force that idea, then you make it aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something that you're not going to notice if they're remaining. It's very useful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
So getting in touch with NAMI and the classes, they used to, according to the card, there's a Colorado branch. Are they online classes or are they classes or?
So there's a Colorado branch and there's also local affiliates, and we're lucky in the Springs. We have a really large affiliate here. We have a lot of classes in person. So I got connected with what we call the Connection Support Group, which is for peers, those of us living with mental health conditions, coming together every week, you know, in a support group. I also took the peer-to-peer class, which is a class for those of us with lived mental health conditions to learn how to take care of ourselves, how to be aware of our warning signs. And that's also in an environment where we're relating to other people too. And it's all in person, they're free. There's classes for family members as well, like Lynn talked about. So there's resources
So you just call it
in the basics class.
Most
Mm-hmm.
of the classes they're quarterly, so this quarter's just about over, so I'm going to say they'll be in January.
Mm-hmm. So Lynn said most of the classes are quarterly, and we're reaching the end of this quarter, and there'll be a new class cycle starting in January. But if you call now, you can get on the list, she said. Yeah, so don't forget. Mhm. Yeah.
Are there, like, trainings or anything for teachers in the school system to recognize it, not just for kids who potentially have it, but like in this situation where a child is growing up in a home with severe mental illness,
Yeah.
and they may not have their own personal mental challenges, but they're dealing with it at home. So
Sure. Yeah.
there is, like the absence, tardiness, probably hygiene's not awesome, or whatever it may be, like the warning signs.
Yeah.
So are educators being educated in that? And if so, then what happens to get the kids the help they need?
So one that we are aware of is mental health first aid. Has anybody in here heard of that? Yeah, mental health first aid. So it's essentially a training similar to CPR, but for mental health. And this is where professionals like teachers are, as well as like youth leaders at church, and other professionals that work directly with kids are trained. I believe it's an 8-hour training that they go through, and they get a certificate at the end, but it covers some of the things that we talked about tonight, but a little bit more in depth. And it goes into a lot of practice scenarios about what do you say in the moment when you see, you know, these signs happening with kids. So, and I believe those are offered, NAMI advertises those classes. Yeah, and some of the schools are doing mental health first aid in-house too.
Yeah, so are there any like books or tools or resources that you can give to the kids
Mm-hmm.
to know how to live in those environments? Because sometimes getting child protection services involved is actually worse.
Yeah.
Put them in another home where they're going to be re-traumatized. You know, so like what
Yeah.
tools can you give to kids
Mm-hmm.
in those situations?
Mm-hmm. There's a need for that. I think personally, my thought on that just initially is connection and maintaining, being that one safe person, even if you know you might be the only safe person in that kid's life, maintaining that connection and not letting go of that, and ensuring, if you're the adult in that situation and you think that kid is going through trauma and abuse at home, maintaining that connection can be really huge for that kid growing up. In terms of other resources, you know, I'm not sure. I mean, there's therapists, you know, certainly that specialize and work with kids. So, you know, referring, if you know of a therapist, you know, or if you know someone who's networked with therapists, you know, that can be a route as well. Sometimes faith communities can be a safe space. You know, sometimes nonprofit organizations like Inside Out, you know, for certain populations, if the kid is LGBT and they feel safe with other LGBT youth, you know, that can be a space. But yeah, it's really those connections, I would say, that are really important. Yeah.
I would just say that most of the time the child is not going to be aware because that's going to be their normal.
Yeah.
So they're not going to know to reach out to somebody and say, my parents have a mental health problem, or somebody whose parent is messed up, or that's their family, or whoever it is, that's just their personality. So they're not going to know to reach out for help.
Right, which I get, and that's why I'm like, if teachers or other people that know them are educated, what can they do to help that child know that that's not going on? You know, like, to learn tools to protect themselves and their own hearts and all that kind of stuff. And just, yeah, I think it's just a need. I think
There is.
a major gap.
Mm-hmm.
It's true, like, you don't have the parents buying you to get them into therapy or,
Yep.
you know, and usually a parent has only connected and isolate that kid so they're not exposing what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, in some schools, they have those little puppet shows, and they have different things to help the kids to know when something is going wrong, so they can tell adults. Do they not? Do they have anything?
I haven't heard of any specifically that are what you described. I have been part of programs that will reach out to high schools and middle schools talking about healthy relationships and how to recognize warning signs of an unhealthy relationship, what consent means with sex, you know, and kind of that sort of awareness and those tools, how to say no, how to be aware of your body. But yeah, I don't know if that really addresses that directly. There's a need for more, for sure.
Also, thank you for sharing your story. It was so cool.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you guys for sharing as well.